What up, what up, what up, you guys? Welcome back to another video. This is the Infinity Midwife with you once again. Welcome, welcome, welcome to my channel. All right, you guys, we're gonna dive right into the subject. This is the new series, again, uncovering collective shadow of my African people, my Black descent, people from the Black community, people of color, but mostly black people. Okay, my people. I love y'all people. I fucks with y'all people. I'm just kidding. But anyhow, so today's video, it's going to be centered around pleasure. Yes. I don't know if it's a belief. Maybe, could be. Let me know in the comment section. Ooh, look at me with a piece of hair over here. Okay. So, going to pleasure. I'm going to be talking to you guys about how pleasure is not a thing in our culture. Okay? We're going to be talking about how pleasure is sometimes perceived with the adult world. Why do I say this? Why do I say that pleasure is usually off limits in our African traditions or cultures or belief? I think it's a belief more than a culture. I don't think it's something that is blatantly out there in your face. But I feel like as children, can correct me if I'm wrong, children is mostly a commodity. Yes, children are perceived as commodities, whether it's in Africa, whether it's in our motherland. But I feel like it's part of the education, right? We do bring children into this world. We are we accept to procreate and to bring children into this world. But I feel like at a very, very, very young age, pleasure is taken out of the equation of being a child. I feel like, yes, children are commodities. Children are there to be useful for the parent. Correct me if I'm wrong. Correct me if I'm wrong for the foreigners, those ones who are living here in those foreign countries and raising children. Do you allow your child to be a child? Is what I'm getting to with this video. Why do I talk about children being children? It's because I feel like, yes, back home, children can be children, but to a certain degree. I feel like children are being brought up in a way that they need to start serving a purpose at a very young age. Not necessarily having responsibilities at a very young age, but depending again on social statuses, economical statuses, I feel like children overall is not a central team when it comes to allowing children to be children. I feel like very early on, children are being put in this box that they need to obey. Not that obedience is a bad thing, but they need to fit a certain model at a very young age. And if they don't, then they are being disciplined in order to fit that model. Not that I'm the best mom out there allowing my children to be the best, not the best, but allowing my children to I'm not the best mom out there, okay? For anybody who's asking or who's wondering, I have 3 boys, and at times it's really, really hard for me to discipline them. I'll put it out there. I'm being honest. I'm sharing experiences here. But one thing that I did not want to diverge from, or I did not want to continually do from the education that I received, was allowing my children to be children. And allowing my children to find pleasure without the guilt that comes with it. Because I feel like I did grow up in an environment where I had to grow up really, really fast. Meaning, yes, there were circumstances and there was situation where, you know, I felt like I had to step up to the plate at a very early on in my childhood. But that goes without to say that I feel that as a theme, as a general theme, do we allow the Black child to be a Black child? Meaning, do we allow our child to find pleasure in the little things, in the little things that for us parents we're looking at it from an adult point of view, and we're like, stop playing with that stupid toy. Or, you know, we're having these very rigid ways of how we want to raise our children. Or, you know, do we let them play in the mud? Do we let them play in the sand? Do we let them, you know, do we let them just finding their own types of pleasure? And where I'm getting at with this train of thought is, I feel that, you know, us, the older generation, I'm not that old, but, you know, having seen my parents grow, or, you know, having been raised by African parents that came to a foreign land, or, you know, being raised in a certain way. Like, I was disciplined very, very early on. Not that I came out bad or anything. It's not to put shade on the African way of raising children. It's just to how can we do it better? And no, I do not want to raise children that are lacking in discipline, that don't know anything about manners, and that aren't respectful to others or to the elderly. That's not what I'm trying to do here, okay? Like, I can be very strict as well, you know, and there are certain things that I still do in order to get discipline out of my children, okay? But what I'm saying is, do we allow our children to be pleasurable? Do we allow them to find pleasure in things that they like to do? Whether, for instance, or for example, you know, one of my child likes to inquire a lot. He has a lot of questions, and he finds it pleasurable to have conversation with his mother about whatever comes through his mind, you know. And he finds real pleasure in dialoguing and having these conversations with me. And I find that I'm not going to reprimand him for that, or I'm not going to tell him, shut up. Or, you know, like, don't come to me with these things. Like, I'm gonna sit down. I'm gonna want to talk with him. I'm gonna want to conversate with him. So it's something that I see that brings him pleasure, right? And even though sometimes it can be topics that are maybe off limits, or, you know, I find that it's crucial that us Black parents, or African parents, or parents from African descent, I feel that it's important that we allow our children to find pleasure in the things that they like doing, that they find interest and they find pleasure, and that we're not there necessarily to reprimand them if it's something that does not fall into the box of what pleasure, or what pleasure looks like, or what is the limits of pleasure. And why am I saying this? Because I feel like as we grow up in these African settings, or these African environment, we do find it hard, or we do find a lot of guilt when it comes to our own personal pleasures. Yeah, I'm talking for myself here, and I'm sure maybe some of you can relate, maybe some of you can't, but I feel like it's a general theme across the board. And so I feel like when it comes to finding our own pleasures, you know, things that makes us pleasurable, whether it's sex, whether it's finding pleasure in reading books, finding pleasure in being outside in nature, walking, or finding pleasure in dancing, finding pleasure in the little mundane things, or finding pleasure in whatever is your pleasures for you, you know, your pleasure points. Like, is it easy for you to express them to your family? Is it easy for you to say, well, that's pleasurable to me? Is it easy for you to actually open up to your spouse, or to your partner, or to your husband, or to your wife, and say, you know, that's pleasurable to me? And I feel that as a general people, I feel that we have this guilt when it comes to pleasure, that it's not something that we dive in with freedom, or we don't take liberty in allowing ourselves to know what is pleasurable to ourselves. There are maybe many underlying reasons for that, but I'm opening up the conversation because I feel that it is important that we do come to a level of freedom as to where we feel free to say, hey, that's pleasurable to me. Not even to shout it out loud to the population to hear, but just for you to take the liberty, whether it's writing in a journal, which I do. I personally have my own journal, and I do journal about the things that are pleasurable to me, or I voice it out to my own self saying, wow, I like doing that. That's pleasurable to me. And it wasn't like that. It wasn't always like that. Like, it took me a while to be able to say that such and such and such is pleasurable to me. The way sometimes that I dress up, I like to, show a bit of body, show a bit of skin and be like, yeah, that's pleasurable to me in that moment. What's up? And take full accountability for it. Why do I feel like it's important for us to have these conversations, whether you're a man or a woman or whatever you want to call yourself? Like, why aren't we having these discussions as adults? And then also looking at, the children that we're bringing into the world. Like, we are offering them space for them to find pleasure in their own things without reprimanding them? The reason why I say this is because we grew up in a certain setting, whether it was culture, whether it was religion, whether it was the circumstances, the educational circumstances, or the way we were raised. I feel like a lot of guilt came with finding pleasure in little stuff, or in mundane stuff, or in taboo stuff, or whatever have you, to the point where, when we talk about pleasurable stuff, it needs to be in a certain setting. It needs to be with all women. It needs to be with all men, if you're a man, or it needs to be with your spouse behind closed doors, or it needs to be validated or approved by certain groups or certain things. And I feel that hinders your own freedom, your own individual freedom as a human, as a person. I feel that creates some sort of shadow, because if you're not open to your own self, that doesn't necessarily have to be exposed or be shared with someone, but if you're not even open to exploring your own sources of pleasures, then what are you hiding from your own self, right? And then what are you hiding to the people that you love or that you say that you love, So this is the type of conversations I feel like in our Africanity, or in our individuality, or in our blackness, or whatever you want to say. I feel like there needs to be having these conversations about what is pleasure, right? Is it necessarily sexual? Is it necessarily sensual? Can it be nutrition? Can it be nutritious? Can it be something that you just enjoy looking, like a sunset or a sunrise? Can it be just enjoying classical music? It doesn't necessarily have to fall in the lines of what is pleasure. Is it enjoyment only? Is it you going to a party? Is that your pleasure? And it's okay if it is. But I mean, do we allow ourselves to speak openly, whether to ourselves or to the people that we love, of what is pleasurable for us, without expecting backlash, judgment, criticism, some sort of guilt? Oh my God, like, why do you like this? Like, you're so like that, or being called for it, or being guilted into it, So I feel like if we can have these types of conversation with ourselves, by ourselves, and then with one or another two person that can know these things about ourselves, I feel like we would be more empowered to be living true lives, like stepping into our true individual self without having to hide so much of the things that makes us feel good, right? I don't know. What do you say? What do you have to say? Because again, it can be part of how we were raised. It can be religious, right? That we have this belief or this concept that, you know, in certain religions, if you do this, then you are deemed the devil, or you are devilish or evil, or it's haram and all these things. I mean, is it really? Right? And then if it is really, like, if you're really blocking yourself from having, and I'm not talking about pleasures, you know, I want to say forbidden pleasures. I don't know what comes to your mind when, you know, we're talking about forbidden pleasures. You know, like, I do want to say this, because again, I don't know how it may come to you, but I want to say this. The general public, or in general, what are pleasures? You know, what is acceptable as pleasure? Period, point blank. Now, I'm sure the majority will not be shouting out loud, well, you know, that's a forbidden pleasure, or this type of thing that you're talking about is forbidden pleasure. Is it really? Now, I'm not talking about having intercourse with minors or children. You're in the wrong channel if you think I'll be talking about these things. I'm not talking about these things. I'm talking about things that are pleasurable to you, that will not bring harm to anyone around you, because you are diving into that pleasure. Okay, that's the type of pleasure I'm talking about. Okay, so it cannot bring harm to someone else. Okay, so if torture is your type of pleasure, then maybe we're not necessarily talking about pleasure here. We're probably talking about some sort of, I mean, I know that there are some form of love where torture is actually part of a practice, you know, of domination and all these things. And that, yes, there can be some form of torture, but we're not talking about that here. And if that's your pleasure, well then, you know, feel free to explore. You know, if you like, you know, being tortured, you know, who am I to say that that's not a form of acceptable pleasure? You know, if you have made peace with that, and that's really you, and you find pleasure in that, and you're not harming anyone by that practice, or by that pleasure that you give to yourself, who am I to say whatever, you know? And these are the types of conversation I feel that we should have, right? If your pleasure is not to harm the collective or harm anyone in the process, why should it be kept in the shadow? Why should it be hidden? You know, if it's something that is pleasurable to you, you need to admit that to yourself at least, right? You should be able to have peace with saying, you know what? I think this is my type of pleasure, and you know, I'm not gonna hide from this anymore. Not necessarily shout it on all, you know, on all floors, or shouting it or saying it to your parents or whatever have you, but just being you, yourself, okay with it, and making peace with it, right? So then it's not in your subconscious mind, and then when a topic is being brought up about that certain practice, you're like, oh my god, if they only knew, and then you have to hide because you feel that they're talking about you when they're not. You know, this is the type of shadow I think that we should maybe be more accountable to the types of pleasure that we like, right? And when we do that, you know, when we make peace with it, we become more authentic to the type of person we are. Maybe in our environment, maybe we're gonna choose more wisely the type of people we want to be around, or we're gonna be more open and be more true to the people we are in our circle, or we allow in our circle. Because this is the thing, when you start taking responsibility for all parts of yourself, some things you're not going to be okay with taking on. When you take full accountability and responsibility for yourself, there are probably people in your circle that you've allowed in because you didn't know what maybe boundary look like, maybe self-acceptance look like, maybe self-love look like, maybe admitting to yourself the type of pleasures you look like. But when you start taking responsibility and accountability for those things, you're going to start seeing that your circle gets smaller. And that's okay. It's okay, because again, that is a belief. It's a belief thinking that we want to fit in everywhere we go. We want to be loved by everybody and everyone, when in actuality, it's the quality of people that you're around that you want to be with, not necessarily the quantity. Because we all know when there's a lot of people around you and that you're not filtering who is around you and why, what are their intentions towards you, maybe you're attracting the devil and you won't even know it. So might as well start coming out of the shadow into the light and admitting those things about yourself that you like, right? And sometimes, I feel like in our community, we do like to bash people that decided to take on certain careers or certain lines of work that are not necessarily seen or deemed as respectful. I know we're big in that, but I hope that with the upcoming generations, we get to bring our children to make wiser choices that are respecting their individuality. We do not need 100,000 more engineers. We do not need 1,000 more CEOs or director or politicians. Or maybe we need to start looking at individuals in their whole shades of who they are, and start embracing diversity in a long-term community, or in a long-term longevity durable community. Because again, we want to start not necessarily taken away from what was done from our parents. Like, I'm not here to bash how our parents raised us, or how things used to be done back in the days, or how traditions still hold value. I mean, there is beauty in everything, right? I just feel like in the way we are going, we need to start making space for more diversity in the way of being, in the way of thinking, in the way of doing, in a way of allowing the other to be, in a way of expressing ourselves, in a way of being free within our own minds. And it's just going to bring more beauty, I believe. So that being said, allow your inner pleasures to come through and to come to light. Thank y'all. Take whatever resonated with you, share, like my video. I'm not gonna, you know what? Subscribe and like my channel. And yeah, stay tuned for the next video.